Hello, welcome on the Innovation and Strategy blog. Today I'm welcoming Gustavo Souza, who's going to tell us about his fund that he's created. And the name of the fund is SaaSholic. Is that right, Gustavo?
That's correct. Thank you for having me here, Guillaume. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correct, as you've done with mine and the fund's name.
So we actually thought about this conversation long and hard before having the interview, and we came up with a list of questions, and maybe we can go through the questions. They begin very basically with you introducing yourself.
Awesome. So first of all, my name is Gustavo Souza, and in terms of my background, I was born and raised in Brazil. I lived for a couple of years in Germany as well during the college, school, whatever, and I actually graduated in law, but most of my career wasn't practicing law. I spent it in a tech company called Rock Content, and there I spent many years in the sales department, leading sales teams, growing outbound sales teams. And later on, I grew through the ranks of the organization and ended up leading some separate business units and went back and forth between Brazil and Canada after we've done an acquisition. During this time, as I was working at Rock Content and dealing with being the general manager of a business unit for the company, I started the fund with my partner, which is also a person that still works at Rock Content. And that's how the SaaSholic story began. So it began as we both were still operators in the tech space. And 6 months ago, I left the company to focus solely in the fund. My partner is still running the company. And we love this scenario in which we are, because we still have contact with the tech industry by being operator and he leading the business there. And now I have more time to dedicate solely for the fund and the investment venture.
Okay, perfect. So tell me, what's your investment thesis? And actually, what is an investment thesis to start out with?
Awesome. So investment thesis is like, you need to have, thesis is a word that I think describes it really well. You need to have some characteristics that you look for when you're investing. It can either be focused in an industry, in a business model, in some market characteristics, geography, and many other criteria. And for SaaSholic, I would say that we typically focus in recurring business models, just like SaaS, for example. And we focus in Latin American companies, so throughout Brazil, Colombia, Argentina, Mexico, whatever. And we are sector and industry agnostic, and we invest in early stage startups. When I mention early stage startups, startups have a different stage of maturity. And SaaSholic focuses mostly in pre-seed and seed investments, which are phases in which the company is still very, very early, finding its product market fit, which is really testing if the public really wants this product, if this product is scalable. And that's when we come in and we help those startups mostly with guidance and some capital.
So my understanding is that an investment thesis might be broken down into 4 different components, which include the business model, the countries, the geographical area you're targeting, the sector, and finally the startup's maturity. Is that right?
Yeah, the stage. I would say that there are more. We can get to as many criteria as our creativity allows us. For example, there are folks that only invest in Stanford alumni, and this is a criteria for them. I only invest in Stanford, Harvard, MIT alumni. And there are other folks that only invest in people that have been through Google, Facebook, Apple, and those kind of companies. And this is for them a thesis. And that's not what we preach, what we practice. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but there are infinite ways and characteristics in which you can build a thesis.
Okay, so typically a marketplace startup would not fall into your investment thesis. Is that correct?
If it's a pure breed marketplace, you're correct. They won't fall into our investment thesis.
Because they don't generate recurring revenue. Is that right?
Perfect. Yeah. Just like, for example, OLX from Fabrice that you've interviewed. I highly admire him. That wouldn't fall into our area of expertise. But many marketplace businesses have a SaaS, dynamic to it, especially if they are B2B marketplaces.
Okay. Maybe can you give me an example on that point? What are the SaaS companies that also have a marketplace?
In terms of one that we invested is called MicroAcquire. So they are a marketplace for listing micro tech businesses for founders that want to have early liquidity. So it's a marketplace, people that want to sell companies and people that want to buy companies. But this business monetizes in a way that the buyers pay the business a monthly fee to have access to the marketplace. And they're also implementing another way to monetize the business, which is charging a fee for service providers that are hired within the platform ecosystem, like people that help with valuation, that kind of stuff. So it's highly recurring in many aspects, but there's a marketplace dynamic to it.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, great. So I think I understand what an investment thesis is. And I think I get what your specific investment thesis is. You introduce yourself. So maybe we can discuss just on a very broad level what venture capitalists do. And I'd like to tell you about a friend of mine who told me that venture capitalists are doing three different things. They acquire funds from LPs. They manage the funds they acquired from LPs and invest in startups. And then so this lasts for a few years because they're on the board and everything. And then maybe after 5 or 7 years, they'll be trying to sell their shares, their startup shares, and return the funds to their LPs. Do you think those are three broad? I think those three broad activities capture what venture capitalists do?
Yes, totally. And if I would need to rewrite this, I would say that one is fundraising. So you need to go out in the market and raise funds for your fund and your vehicle. And two is really finding the best opportunities and having access to the best opportunities and being accepted there, like sourcing opportunities. And the third one would be supporting your portfolio companies and helping them grow. I wouldn't really include the exiting part there because it's a much smaller part of our daily lives than it is finding opportunities and helping them grow. But it sure is important. Otherwise, we won't return investment, return a profit to our investors.
Okay. So thank you for the generic description. So can we go through each of these 4 of these broad categories and look at the smaller sub activities that they're made up of? Is that possible?
Yeah, sure.
So please remind me, what's the first broad activity you mentioned?
So the first one is fundraising and investor relations. So that's everything that has to do with funds, LPs. And when I mention LP, it stands for limited partners. So the investors in a fund are called limited partners, and the fund managers are called general partners. So that everything that has to do with LPs falls into that bucket, but they are mainly fundraising once the fund is getting started, And on a daily, I won't say daily basis, but it's constant. You need to be in touch with your investors, letting them know how things are going, and so on and so forth. This is one area of responsibility.
So, okay, so let's try to break down. So I get fundraising and investor relations.
Yeah.
There are two important people there, LPs and GPs.
Yeah.
And so this is divided up in two: fundraising, investor relations. So what's part of fundraising?
Fundraising. So I would say that a part of it is internal. So you really need to understand what will be the kind of fund that you will be raising, and for whom this fund will be appealing and make sense. And then you more or less make a list of people that you think would be interested in investing in you. And then comes the fun part. You really start reaching out to people, mostly not through cold emails, but really you go first to the people that you know you have a connection to, and you start getting your first commitments. Commitments are the people who say that they will invest, and they sign a proper document with that commitment to you. So once you start getting the commitments, you start understanding who has a connection to whom in this industry, and you start getting referred to those people, and you just go talking to the people that are interesting to you. So,
Okay.
And when I say interesting, not just for the money, because
Yes.
there are folks that bring more than just money. So
Right.
there are people that bring deal flow, which is new opportunities for you to analyze. Other people are highly technical and can help companies grow or assess opportunities. And you need to make your team of investors as you're making your team that works with you.
That makes sense. And so at one point you end up raising funds.
Yeah.
And that's when you move on to investor relations. Is that correct?
Yeah. So raising the fund typically isn't like a black and white thing. There are multiple closings. So you do not need to raise the whole fund to start working. What people typically do, they have a minimum threshold. Let's say once I raise 60, 70% of my goal, the fund will be operational and I'll start working. And the remainder of the capital will end up, we will find the remainder of the capital along the way. And that's what people typically do.
Okay.
So an investor relations, that's a constant duty from the general partners to the limited partners. And in terms of investor relations, what we typically do is we have frequent investor updates, typically quarterly and a longer drafted semesterly update. But the relations aren't just those formal relations, but also, for example, we have a WhatsApp group with all of our investors in which they exchange value among themselves, and we update them on more mundane updates and things and discussions there. And we're always also in touch with them, because the best investors you can find are the investors that you want to talk to, not the investors that you need to talk to, the ones you want to talk to. And we're in constant touch with our investors for for many reasons.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, perfect. Okay, now, so you mentioned, so that I think we've covered the first topic.
Yeah.
What is the second topic?
So the second topic, I would describe it as deal sourcing, origination, something like that.
Okay.
So what this means is, I need to have, in order for a fund to be successful, you need to have access to the best opportunities. So you can be the best person in analyzing and judging opportunities, but it doesn't serve anything if you don't see these opportunities. So that's the first thing. What are your channels that you will be using to generate deal flow or pipeline, as we say in the industry? And there are multiple channels that you can leverage. And for us, for example, the ones that work best, the companies that are referred from our investors, they're awesome because they're mostly people from the tech industry, and they see many things and they send it to us to analyze. That's an awesome channel. Another great channel for us are companies that are referred from the companies that we've already invested. Because founders talk to founders all the time. And when they're asked, oh, do you know good, great investors? Some of them end up referring us, and we find awesome opportunities there. So there are many, many other channels. I will list them, won't go into the details. Inbound, so the people that come through you, through your website or social media, that kind of stuff. Relations with partner venture capitalists. So having contact with other VCs, either downstream or upstream. And when I say downstream is, I am an early stage investor. There are folks that invest in later stage, and they don't really spend that much energy with early stage companies. And they have all the interests in the world to have someone else funding those companies. And we have relationship with some of those great people. What else? I'm sure that I'm forgetting many other channels, but those are some of the most important ones.
Okay.
So
this is a quick question. What do you make of? I know this is a post-COVID conversation.
Yeah.
But what would you make of going to conferences, tech-driven conferences? I know that in a pre-COVID world, there were a lot of venture capitalists that would tend to deliver keynotes, and also a number of entrepreneurs that do the same. And this was, I've seen many, VC entrepreneurs sort of meeting spaces. Is that also an area that can originate deals? Or
yeah, that is. I would put this into the marketing bucket, either the online marketing or offline marketing. And they do generate awareness, so people know you exist. And in order for them to come to you, they must know that you exist. Conferences, that kind of thing works well for pipeline generation, as long as the conference is focused on the entrepreneurs.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Perfect. Okay. So does this cover the topic of deal sourcing and origination?
Yeah. So that would be deal sourcing. And that's a huge part of our time investment, everyone's time investment.
That's an interesting point. You would say what, 30%?
Yeah, about 30%, I'd say 20-30%.
And the first part, which is fundraising and investor relations, that would be
less.
15?
Yeah, 10 to 20%. At the end, if we end up doing the math here, it might be more than 100%.
I'm guessing you're working long hours.
That's it. So we can get as many percents as we want.
Okay, great. So I think we've covered the second topic. What's the third activity that you look at?
The third one, I would call it investment analysis. So once you have the funds, that's the first one, and you have the opportunities, the second one. The investment analysis is, in which of those companies are we investing? Because you can only invest on the best of breed, and you need to analyze lots of stuff, not just numbers, but you need to talk to the founders, you need to study the market, study competitors, how the market is developing. And so it comes to many things that you need to study and analyze. And that requires time and also some internal and external discussions. For example, a health tech company comes to us. We do our internal due diligence. We like it, but I'm not an expert on this industry. We have investors that have succeeded in this industry. We typically reach out to them to understand if the company dynamics and market is any good. So that's part of the analysis. That also costs time. And one thing that I don't know if it falls through this bucket or the deal sourcing bucket. You have the opportunity, you analyze it, then you need to fight for your allocation. Not fight, but you need to win and deserve a space in the company's cap table. Because
so that's interesting. What does that mean?
So in today's venture capital market, we're seeing lots of money. So lack of money is not a problem anymore. There are many venture capital firms and funds, and the good and the great founders will find the money. The challenge is what kind of investors do they want to have alongside them? And we as investors need to deserve our space in their cap table. When I say cap table is owning a share of that company and becoming partners for those founders. And doing this means really providing the founders not just money, but also something else that differentiates your firm from all the others that would also be supplying them with capital.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. And once you've done that, so you've actually have a place in a startup's the cap table. So what's the next activity that's part of the VC
so
activities?
The biggest, largest bucket, I would say, is portfolio supporting. And so our fund thesis and value proposition is we assist founders not just with cash, but also with marketing, sales, and go-to-market tactics and strategy. And we need to be close to those founders, understanding what their challenges are, and helping them grow their business, especially through those early stage periods in which we have more experience. When I say we, it's me and my two partners. And that's where we spend most of our time, to be frank.
So that, I'm guessing that's 50%?
I would say 50, maybe 40, 40%. Because there are many other stuff. I wish I could be doing 60% of my time only.
So this for you is the most important part of your job.
No, only that does nothing. You're just a mentor. You're not a venture capital investor. You need to really be able to balance the others: fundraising, creating deal flow, analyzing, and then supporting. Otherwise, you're just an advisor.
Okay. Actually, I forgot to ask you the question. How much time are you allocating to investment analysis?
Maybe 20%, because yeah, 20%.
I think we're almost over the 100%
yeah, okay.
figure, but that's
we're already working at night.
Okay. So portfolio management, are we through with portfolio support, or is there anything else?
Yeah, that's basically we'll help the founders with whatever they need help with.
Right. This is actually a relatively recent development in the VC world, because in the past, venture capitalists were not helping their entrepreneurs with the operational side of things. I'm guessing this is might be the influence of Y Combinator or another bunch of startup studios that really help entrepreneurs throughout the creation process. Is that correct?
Yes and no, to be frank. So in the beginning of the beginning, like Sequoia, for example, Sequoia has been always really active in the companies they've invested. And the reason for this is the venture capital didn't exist, and growing a tech company was still a mystery and unknown. So they needed to be helping the companies to grow, otherwise they would just fail, because there were no knowledge in that market. But then the market developed itself, and there were more founders with some experience, and they needed just money. And then came the second wave of investors that were just the people that had the money and the appetite for risk. And then that's where I agree with you 100%. When cash was scarce and there were plenty of opportunities, folks didn't need to reach out to the founders and help them. They were providing them capital, and that was all. But now that there is an abundance of capital in the market, you need to differentiate yourself. Otherwise, your only way to differentiate your venture firm would be paying more to the founders. And at the end, you will have a hard time returning your fund to your investors.
Okay. I'm actually looking at the time, and we've already spoken a lot on what venture capitalists are doing. So maybe we can finish on this topic today, and then we can reconnect in a few weeks to discuss a number of other things in the venture capitalist life and space. Is that okay?
That's awesome.
Okay.
Pleasure.
So is there anything else? So you mentioned what venture capitalists do. You said, if I look at the beginning, you mentioned fundraising and investor relations, deal sourcing and origination, investment analysis, and portfolio support. Is there anything else?
All the rest I would call back office, like internal things, like, oh, you need to hire people to help you run your fund. You need to pay your taxes, audit, all the bureaucratic and non-bureaucratic internal issues we call back office. And those are—
How about returning capital to the LPs?
So I'll see, yeah, like selling your share in the companies, you mean? Correct.
Yes.
To be frank, we are still in the early stages of our firm, and venture capital vintages typically last 8 to 10 years. That's something we aren't investing much time in. So we actually need to fight to stay in the companies that are doing well, not to sell our ownership there. But at the end, we expect that this will require some time. But the best opportunities are more or less the best companies. It's easy to sell your shares there. Where it's hard is on the companies that will be struggling in the future, and those companies will need help finding a new home and having liquidity. But that's something that we don't now invest time with. So I can't really tell you how many percent, what the percentage of our day we invest in that.
Okay. Now, I'm guessing back office, you would spend 10% of your time or less?
Yeah, and we try to delegate. I try to delegate this to as much as possible to, for example, executive assistant. We have one that helps us, is fantastic, Raquel.
Okay.
And, it works.
Great. So look, I think we've had a pretty interesting conversation on what venture capitalists do. Maybe we can reconnect in a few weeks to discuss the life of a VC.
Let's do it.
And other parts of the conversation that we were looking at. Is that okay?
How to get started. That's awesome. And one thing that many folks ask is how to get started as a VC, the path to VC, if it's worth it, and we can cover that in our next conversation.
Perfect. So then the next conversation will be how to get started as a venture capitalist.
Awesome.
All right, Gustavo, thank you very much for your time and your ideas, and see you in a few weeks.
See you. Thank you for the opportunity. It was a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.